It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
So let's jump right in and start with some of the pandemic financial pitfalls that you ought to be aware of if you're in your 20s. And this first one, I feel like this is almost a public service announcement by us, Brian, because I think that potentially like bloggers and the media and the financial world is painting in a positive light something that maybe shouldn't be seen as quite so positive.
Yeah, and look, there's a lot of people hurting. I mean, I think it is great that unemployment benefits, part of CARES Act is that they boosted in the short term how much unemployment payment was going to be. And we'll probably be struggling with this all the way through July, but there's been an unanticipated downside to it. And the fact that there are a large portion of people that are making more money on unemployment than they are actually working. But I am so happy that these people actually have money coming in. But here's the two big pitfalls that we wanted to make people aware of. Realize that this will end at the end of July. So don't use this. Use this for what it's meant to. Is this supposed to be a bridge to get you back to gainful employment? Don't let this thing sit out there too long so that you have gaps in your resume, because people will notice that. And they're also going to ask you questions, so you need to be prepared.
We've even seen this when we have other business owner friends who've said, hey, okay, I've been able to open back up, I've been able to go back to business, but I can't get my workforce to come back because they say, well, I'm making more on unemployment or whatever. Recognize that employer is probably going to make the decision. If you're not willing to come back to work, they're going to find someone who will. So potentially you thinking that you're kind of, I don't want to say gaming, but taking advantage mathematically of the more advantageous pay structure, maybe missing out on the availability to get that job back long term.
It's like most things. If you need it, use the resource. That's what unemployment insurance is there for. That's what your employer pays for it. But if you're starting to find that you're gaming the system, you might be in gray zone. I mean, it was all those things that were part of the CARES Act. If you're gaming it and not using it for the intent, you're probably on shaky ground. Moving on. Number 2, you've got to keep it out of the ditch financially by having your deductibles covered. You're probably realizing right now, that stat that comes out every year, that 60% of Americans don't have $1,000. When you have crazy stuff going on, cash kind of is king to have liquidity.
That's right. For those of you that are in your 20s, just starting out in your careers, you have to go check out our show, Financial Order of Operations, because the very first step in the financial order of operations is to make sure that you have your health insurance deductible, your auto deductible, if you own a house, your homeowner's deductible covered so that, just like you said, when that train hits you on a Tuesday night, you're ready for it.
And then this is another one for 20-year-olds, because 20-year-olds, let's face it, we're all, when I was in my 20s, broke. I just didn't, because you're in the stage of your career that you're learning on the job, you're trying to get your 5 years so you can get your 10,000 hours. It makes sense that money is not necessarily easy.
Sure.
So we tell people, especially when you're facing situations where maybe cash is leaner because incomes are down because of everything that's going on, don't rack up debt. That is a danger that I think a lot of 20-year-olds face.
Yeah, the one thing that we see in our 20s is that we have a scarcity of resources, but a plethora of folks who are willing to let us borrow money to maybe, I think you said all the time, fake it until we make it. We want to be able to live a certain lifestyle or do a certain type of thing. And there are tons of industries that are built around allowing you as an individual to live beyond your means.
Now, we have built an entire platform off the power of compounding interest. We talk about army of dollar bills. But, Bo, I got to tell you, there's a dark side to compounding interest when you're not harnessing that power for good, for yourself, for building your financial independence. It can actually work against you. And when you build up high-interest credit card debt, you firsthand get to experience that. And we tasked full-time equivalent Daniel with coming up with some teachable moments from this.
So let's look at the dark side. Let's assume that you have a 22-year-old and they have an average credit card balance making the minimum monthly payment. Well, we know that right now the average interest rate for a credit card is somewhere around 17.76%. And most credit cards will allow you to make a minimum payment of either $25 or 3% of the outstanding balance, whichever one is higher. And we know that the average credit card balance right now is about $6,194. So let's take this 22-year-old person. They have $6,194 of credit card debt at 17.76%, and they're just going to pay the minimum payment. Well, when they do that, It actually takes them 14.9 years
That's crazy.
to pay off that balance. And that thing that only cost them $6,194 actually ends up accruing another $5,543 of interest for a total cost of $11,737, almost twice as much as it was originally worth.
So it's that death by 1,000 paper cuts, because you didn't get to $6,194 one time.
Nope.
What likely happened is you bought an iPhone, you bought some clothes, you bought some shoes. You might have, obviously putting groceries on this. It's not even all bad stuff.
Sure.
Look, in these dark times, I understand a lot of this might be necessity, but when you're using high interest credit card debt, here's what I don't like to see. When you turn $6,200 worth of credit card debt into something that's the equivalent of $12,000. That's almost double. But we wanted to show you, what if you weren't a victim in this situation to the dark side of compounding interest? What if you flipped the script? You were actually a saver. You were responsible. You passed the adult marshmallow test and actually started saving early and often. What would the same dollars out of your pocket and invest it? Meaning there's no change in behavior other than instead of you paying off credit card debt, now you're starting to invest and make this money work for you. What would that scenario look like?
So again, we want to compare apples to apples. So we just took that minimum payment that you were paying, whether it was the 3% of the $25, and we just invested that over the long term. Well, by the time the credit card is paid off, you will have saved $34,713 for retirement. Again, this just assumes an annual rate of return of 10%. That minimum payment, instead of paying your credit card, you invested it, earning 10%. You would have saved up, by the time you hit that 14.9 years, $34,713.
And I'm just repeating what you were basically sharing. $12,000 that was paid on the credit card debt, it was $11,700 and something, is now the equivalent at close to $35,000. But there's more to this story.
What happens if you think about that $34,000, almost $35,000 you've accumulated, and what can that really do for your long-term financial success? Well, it gets really, really exciting. If you just take that money, you don't add another dollar to it, but you allow it to stay invested until the time you get to 65, it turns into $573,711.
So realize, for less than, we know a car. Most people, when you look at what the average car in America is right now, it's close to $30,000.
Yep.
And you can quickly see that for something that was just $6,000, that's lifestyle stuff. That's clothing. That's furniture for the apartment. That's groceries, things like that. It could be over $500,000 from your retirement. Talking about ripple effects turning into waves, or the butterfly effect really impacting your financial life, this ought to scare you if you're not using compounding interest for your benefit.
I was going to say the same thing, Brian. When you're in 20s, you have a choice to make. Do you want compounding interest to be the thing that's rocket fuel, or do you want to be that damp blanket that you just can't get out from under?
And that's a great segue, because the next point we wanted to show on Pitfalls is not harnessing the power of your army of dollar bills or cutting off their full potential.
Yep.
And Bo, there's two great illustrations. I know you and Daniel worked on this long and hard. Let's go over, because this is a resource that you can actually sign up for right on moneyguy.com and use it to your benefit.
That's right. If you go to moneyguy.com and click on the resource page, you can actually download this right now. And you've heard us talk about this all the time, that $1 when you're 20 years old, if you invest that until the time you turn 65, can turn into $88.
That's incredible.
But that's just for a 20-year-old. Obviously, the numbers change when you're 25, 30, 35, 40, and so on. So you should go out there and check out our Money Multiplier deliverable, because not only can you see what happens at 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, we actually created a chart just for you guys that at every single age, you can see what your money multiplier is. So if you know that you're a 28-year-old and you've built up $50,000 of investment portfolio, you can take that $50,000, go multiply it by 29.7, and without saving another dollar, that's how much you're set up to have by the time you get to 65. So this should get you excited, not just about the future dollars that you are saving, but it should get you really juiced about the hard work you've already done, the time you've already put in.
So how much does that resource cost, by the way?
Absolutely nothing.
So go to moneyguy.com, sign up. We have all kind of resources on there. You're missing out if you don't go check out some of the free resources. And that leads to, I want to kind of close out the 20s. One last thing. We've already talked about the dangers of credit cards. We've talked about the dangers of not saving for the future. But there's one more. And I thought this was interesting. Daniel shared this one with us, is that he knows within his apartment complex, the landlords are starting to get nervous. Will they collect their rents? Because people are obviously struggling during this pandemic. So they sent out this crazy email that basically, and I loved what Daniel did. He took the text from the email, but then he changed it to our favorite resident. And it's basically a payday loan. So share the details of this, Bo.
So this is the actual email that Daniel, full-time equivalent Daniel got, saying, hey, I know that you guys may be going through some trouble, and don't worry, there are resources out there. Here are 2 companies that are more than happy to help you make next month's rent payment.
So it sounds like if you just took that, you get this email, you're like, wow,
they're watching out for me.
My landlord is looking out for us. And then Daniel took it a step further. He went and researched each one of these resources. Look at the first one. Now, number uno, I don't know if the apartment complex looked at this. The first one, yes, you could get help with next month's rent, but they're going to charge you an interest rate of 99.99%. Guys, I don't have anything in my bat belt that will help you make 99.99% in the first year.
Nope.
That's criminal.
And if you even look at the second company, now it was better. It was a lot better.
Man, comparatively speaking, it seems like a deal, but we know that that's a ripoff too.
For only an average annual interest rate of 27%, you could borrow money to cover your rent. Guys, you will never get out of this hole if you dig yourself in there. If you're following the financial order of operations and you're covering your deductibles and you're getting your employer match and you're building an emergency fund, you should not have to do these things. These should be, I don't even want to say a last resort, because if you're having to do this kind of stuff, then you are just in a bad spot. These are not things that you need to be utilizing in your financial
tool belt. It is
tool
wild to me when credit cards look responsible compared to payday loans. So be very careful. Just do not touch. Beware of these type of tools.
Love it.